Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services, and your host today. So as Nicole mentioned, throw in the chat where you're joining us from. We always like to see what parts of the state we have our attendees join in from. So we've got Kingman, Phoenix, Cholo, Peoria, Casa Grande, Tucson, Phoenix, Chandler.
Oh, Tucson's cold today,
Peoria,
Robert.
Oro Valley, Scottsdale.
Missouri. Wow.
Got from the Hopi tribe. All right, thank you. Hello, Goodyear, Tucson, Oregon. All right. We are a multi-state webinar this morning.
Yeah, Rhode Island too. We got New Hampshire. I bet it's even colder in Rhode Island than it is in Tucson.
We've got the Southwest, the Northwest, the Midwest, and the East Coast. We are set. We made it. We are there. All right. Hi, welcome from Dolan Springs. Excellent. So thank you for posting that up. If you just joined, please post in the chat where you're tuning in from. We like to see that. Again, I'm Robert Theobald. I'm the Small Business Ombudsman and Vice President of Small Business Services at the Arizona Commerce Authority. And we're excited to have you with us today as we kick off our Small Business Bootcamp series for 2024. We got to fix that on the slide because it's not 2023. I'm sure we're all still writing the wrong dates in many places. So, but thank you for joining us. If you're new, we like to start out by thanking all of our community partners. We could not do these webinars without their time, their effort, and their expertise. I do know quite a few things, but not enough to do every webinar. So that's why we bring in these experts, because they know better than I do. So we like to thank them. If you're also new to the Small Business Bootcamp, it is a weekly webinar series designed to help businesses prepare, plan, and grow. A little bit of the history is it started back in the pandemic, and we've continued ever since, bringing in experts from all over the various different fields to help provide that all the information that helps small business owners with all the different hats they wear. And then not only is it the boot camp that we do every Tuesday morning at 9 a.m., we also do some workshops and special sessions that we call Small Business Bootcamp workshops or Small Business Bootcamp special sessions. And we're going to actually talk about those later here. But we also record all of them, all the webinars, and include them in our content library. And so everybody can access the content library, and we have well over 250 recorded webinars. It's actually over 300 now, recorded webinars that you can go back and watch at any time and get that material, review it, or, you know, if you've got a friend or a family member that might be able to use it, you can send them the link to it. It's a great resource. We also include the slide decks from all of our presenters in there. So if you watched it and you want to get the slide deck, you can go into the content library and pull that information as well. So even for today's session, the slide deck will be made available when we get the session posted into the content library. The ACA also has a number of programs to support small businesses across the state. We have our Arizona Career Readiness Credential, the Arizona Innovation Challenge, our Arizona MEP, our Manufacturing Extension Partnerships for Arizona's manufacturers. We have the State Trade Expansion Program for all of the businesses out there looking to export your goods and services to other markets outside of Arizona. Arizona at Work can help with some of your employment needs. And then the Small Business Services team that I oversee, we can help with navigating the SBA, working with the Small Business Development Center, SCORE, Women's Business Center, and other programs that we provide to help support small businesses. One of those programs that we like to identify is the Small Business Checklist. You can scan that QR code on the side of your screen there. It'll take you to it. But the Small Business Checklist is an online interactive resource that helps businesses, either people starting their businesses or business looking to expand and grow, identify the commonly requested licensing, registration, and compliance needs at the local, state, and federal level. You can also find a lot of other great information in there with related to business planning, development, procurement, marketing, et cetera. So it's an amazing resource. And again, that QR code will take you to the checklist. and our chat bot that we have on there, our virtual assistant, Sally. She can help you with some simple questions, but if you really want to dive into the meat of the information, you can go into the checklist itself and get a ton of information. So with that, let's look at some updates. This slide is a little more full today because we have a lot of new things for the beginning of the year. First, very important to make note of is Arizona's minimum wage actually went up January 1st to $14.35 an hour. So if that impacts you, please make note of that. Another important thing that went into effect on January 1st was the Corporate Transparency Act and the beneficial ownership information reporting. FinCEN, it says there, FinCEN accepting BOI reports. We're going to post links to all this stuff in the chat as well. Faith will do that. But we are going to have a webinar, and I'll talk more about it on this program next week. But be mindful of some new reporting requirements for ownership information. We're also going to post a link to some articles on small business funding and tax information in the chat. There's a lot of good information as you're starting to look at taxes. It's tax season is coming up. And then for any lawyers or accountants we have out there, we're going to be posting at the end of about the 22nd or so of January, a solicitation, a request for quotes, an RFQ to be a qualified vendor provider for the State Small Business Credit Initiative Technical Assistance Program. So if you want more information on that, you can feel free to reach out to me directly or just stay tuned for those notifications. We'll let everybody know when that goes out as well. So with that, let's jump into our upcoming sessions. We're excited. We have a 3-part series. We don't list the parts there because if you can't make one of them, that's okay. It'll be recorded. You can watch the recording, or you can just go to the one that's going to help you. But next Tuesday, we'll have how to build a growth plan that will meet your goals. And then the following week on how to implement your growth plan with our same presenter as today's, and we'll get into that. And then we have another marketing one on e-commerce, small business, big impact, a blueprint for e-commerce marketplace success. This one is going to target specifically Amazon, Walmart marketplaces and how to do business on those. We're really excited about that. That one is going to be an hour and a half. Just to give you a heads up, it's going to go past the hour mark, but we want to make sure we have time to dive into it because it's the first time we've done that topic. So with that, we're going to look at some of those special sessions I mentioned. On Wednesday, January 17th, we're going to have a webinar on the beneficial ownership information, the Corporate Transparency Act, and the information that you need to know about that program as a business owner or someone looking to start a business. And then on Thursday of next week, so we're going to have webinars on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of next week. We have a lunch and learn, so starting at noon with the Arizona Department of Revenue and their education team to talk about transaction privilege tax errors and how to avoid them. And that's real important if you have things that relate to transaction privilege tax. ADOR is wanting to do this webinar to help businesses understand ways to avoid any of the fees and fines that may come with some of those errors. So it's a great session that we've done before with them, and we're looking forward to this one. So with that, we're going to jump into today's session. And we have our previous presenter and great friend of the Commerce Authority, Nicole Zeno. She's the founder of Clever Cow Media and also other businesses that she's founded and exited from. She's also was part of the Phoenix Business Journal's 40 Under 40. So we're excited to have Nicole back with us. And Nicole, I'm going to stop sharing and turn the time over to you.
Perfect.
As Nicole gets started, if you have questions, please post them at the bottom of your screen. You'll see a thing that says Q&A. If you click on that, you can post your questions. We like to do that so they don't get lost in the chat, and we can help get those questions answered better. So Nicole, all yours.
Awesome. Well, like I was saying, new year, new slide deck. Loving the look of the new ACA slide deck there. And if you guys are thinking about, I just want to make sure I'm sharing the right screen here.
Yep.
Perfect. So if you guys are thinking about new year, new goals, that's exactly where we're going to start today. And I was just telling Robert and Faith as we started that this is a really interesting exercise for me because I run these growth plan kind of exercises with clients all the time, and they are a very organic piece, right? But one thing that I noticed when looking backwards was that all of them had the same essential pieces, and that's where we're kind of starting today. And as Robert said, this is a 3-part series, mainly because there's 3 main parts to get us through going from where you guys are now to a full growth plan and implementing that growth plan. So as I get started here, let me start with a little bit of a story, though. I'm a storyteller. I love to tell stories, and I think that even if we're talking about web pages, the storyline is very important. So let me first tell you a story. This here is my dad. He started a web development business when I was very, very young, in the basement of my childhood home, and I watched as he grew this business. And I thought, okay, there we go. I learned a lot from him, including how to work hard, how to goal set, how to build a successful business. I learned really quickly the impact one small business could have on not just our family, but a community. But I also learned a few other things. I learned that we always had to be in communication. I was never to be without my phone. I was never to, take too much time off. I was never, if I wasn't there or he wasn't there, the business didn't run, and that I had to work really long hours and forego some sleep. You can tell here, that we worked really hard, but we learned a lot of those things. And I feel like most business owners feel that same place. As I started my career and started working with my family business, both my brother and my dad, I built businesses, exited from them, worked in every type of company from startup to Fortune 100 and 500. And through my experiences, I saw how businesses, both good and bad, run at every level. So from corporate to mom and pop. One thing that was a thread throughout that I learned was that businesses could run in a proactive or a reactive mode. And proactive means that those are people who take initiative and make things happen, while reactive people simply wait for them to happen. So how does that work into business? Proactive is really allowing their teams to plan and execute, resulting in better results and less stress. And reactive is, I need this yesterday. And if you've probably said that over the past few months or a year, I hear it all the time when I talk to new clients, when I talk to people who are looking to engage in our marketing services. When did you need it? What's your timeline? I needed it yesterday, or I need more sales, or I need a new person on my team. These are things that you hear a lot within small businesses. And even though I realized that businesses ran better in proactive mode, most SMBs run in reactive mode, which is exactly what me and my dad did. So fast forward to now, I have a successful marketing agency. Like Robert said, I was named Phoenix Business Journal's 40 Under 40, named Top 100 Marketing Leader. I've spoken on stages. I have worked with many businesses, and that's not even the reason why this topic is as important to me. I felt that my growth plan wasn't fitting my why, and decided to pivot to solve this problem for small businesses. So that's my aha moment. I made it my mission to solve this. And we've been working really hard at Clever Cow Media to build products and processes that really help small businesses. In the marketing world, in the business growth world, a lot of companies leave small businesses behind, and that's not what we wanted to see happen. So how can we fix this? All right. Think of your business like building a house, right? Business is very complex, but in building your house, there's really 3 phases. Phase 1 is your planning, right? The outcome we want is the blueprints of the house. anyone who's talking about building a house would be crazy if they didn't have those blueprints, right? Where do the walls go? Where do the windows go? What's the layout of the house? You can't build a foundation, a really good foundation, without those blueprints. The second phase is that, your contractor comes, your crews come, they actually build the house. They put the walls up, they put the windows in, and you have an outcome of a product. And the third phase is the staging and selling phase. This is where maybe a real estate agent, I'm sure we have a few on today, come in and they really know what to make the house look like, what do buyers want to hear or see, and they can sell the house, right? So that seems very simple, but when we're talking about business, startups, and I worked once again with companies of all stages. So I've seen how we can learn from startups, how we can learn from corporate, and how we can learn from small businesses. So in startups, they're really good at this planning phase, right? We go through what's called a pitch deck. In order to get money from VCs, angels, or all these pieces where we really plan out everything from the mission to the product timeline to how much money we need, where we're burning it, what our market looks like, and what it's going to look like in 5-10 years. One of the things that we noticed is that when startups fall short, it's because they're really good at the pitch deck and then they have trouble executing on the build or the design phase. However, on the other side of the spectrum, corporate is really good at the staging and selling phase, right? They're really good at figuring out what customers want to see in a product. They're really good at reviews and audits, messaging and budgets. But sometimes where they fall short is that they can become out of touch, which makes building and planning phase a little bit less effective and makes it a lot harder to be effective. And then that's where you guys come in. The small businesses, these are my passion, these are my people, right? You guys are really, really good at getting your hands dirty and doing the hard work of building. But what I often see is that a small business, and I've done this too, has a great idea and they jump from idea into building that business because we are doers. We are people who go out there and make it happen. But that's the equivalent to saying, I want to build a house or I have an idea to build a house and then going to Home Depot, buying some 2x4s and a hammer and starting to, hammer it together, right? And for a while, this works really well for small businesses. But as you guys decide to grow, you start seeing trouble. There starts being some growing pains because of lack of processes, planning, and marketing. And those three things are really important as we move into our growth phases of our business. So over the next 3 weeks, we're going to learn how building a plan will help with all three of these steps and set your business up for success in 2024. This is the biggest gap I see with businesses, is that there's plenty of companies out there who can execute on your plans, whether that is social media, that is, a website, that is, B2B sales teams. There are plenty of companies out there helping you execute. Where small businesses fall short is in the planning and proactive stages. So I want you to be able to go on vacation and to wake up or go to sleep without so much stress on you. And I want you to get those sales and that growth you want. And that is why the planning phase is so important. Don't just take it from me. This is a quote from a client we just did a planning session with. She not only says that working on our company's 5-year vision was insightful and enjoyable, but also that we have figured out a way to get it and turn it into a narrative and a plan for you to execute on. So let's start with a marketing and growth plan. What is a marketing and growth plan? And these are really just the actions you're going to take to hit your goals. So often I see that people really understand how to build a goal. We talk about SMART goals all the time, but how do you get from point A to point B? And for me, this might be an unpopular opinion for some. The biggest difference between a marketing and growth plan is that marketing, you're really going to focus on just the activities you need to get the word out about your product. A growth plan is really going to encompass all of the things, including people that you're going to need, product timelines, revenue. How are you going to grow the business, right? And my unpopular opinion is that you can't have one without the other. So when we build marketing plans for our clients, we really start talking about what are those growth goals? What does success look like? How are you going to implement these things? Because if you, let's say, want to put on a huge event or go to 10 trade shows in the next year, you still need the people and the processes that are going to make that happen. And a lot of marketing plans don't look at that piece. Same thing with growth. You cannot have growth of a product and a business without marketing. And even if you say to me, hey, Nicole, we only have a sales team, that still, from in my opinion, falls under that marketing bucket, because they still need to get the word out. They need to know how to message about your product. They need to know, make sure it looks branded, right? There are lots of pieces that go into that marketing world, and you cannot grow a business without it. So honestly, they go hand in hand, and that's why we're going to talk about a growth plan. And I may use marketing and growth plan interchangeably throughout this next 3 weeks. All right, so we're going to really dive in here. This week is going to be the foundational parts of what it's going to take to kind of build that plan. Next week, like Robert said, we're going to be building those plans, and there's going to be very actionable step 1, step 2, step 3. This week is getting all the information together that we need in order to build that plan successfully. And when we do this with clients, we do it as either an in-person where we sit down for a day and literally walk through everything. We do it as audits where we jump into, the tech, and we'll get into some of these pieces, the tech, the marketing, what has worked, what hasn't. Or we do this as discovery calls where we break it down and we talk through all of these pieces. For you guys, you may be working through this as a solopreneur if you're one person in your business. If there's topics you can work through with people, wonderful, but set time aside to go through these pieces. They are really important, even if you feel like you've thought of these before. So the first piece is knowing your why. Every one of us has started our business for a reason. We either saw a problem that we could solve, we saw a way we could solve it better, or we wanted a particular life or particular freedoms in our life that we wanted. But often we lose track of this why. So every day we go through, decisions, small and big, that are going to get us farther away or closer to our why. And when we're in the thick of things, when we're in the weeds as small business owners, very often we don't even realize what that decision has done until we are 6 months, a year, 3 years, 5 years down the line. And we go to look back and realize we were on the wrong track, or we were on the right track. Maybe we are. But for me, what I find is that reevaluating your why, reevaluating your mission, these pieces that feel like, oh, I've done that work already, reevaluating it and seeing where you are and where things have changed every 6 months or a year will help you stay on track, so that you don't get 5 years down the line, realize you did a ton of work, and realize how far away you are. That's when you start feeling burnt, you start feeling overworked, and that happens way more often in small businesses than in corporate or other types of businesses. So just figuring out this myth here. I can skip this step. I did this when I started my business. Once again, I really would highly recommend that you revisit this why. Everything in our life changes, including the technology, the market space, the social and political and economic views of where you're at from when you started. Things have changed. And even if the overall has not changed, your day-to-day why or your yearly why may have changed. So let's make sure we're not building a plan on faulty assumptions, because if you build a plan on your why or the numbers you pulled 3 years ago, your plan is not going to get you where you want to be. So what does this look like? This looks like thinking through what's your mission, who are you helping, who your ideal customer is, or what's the ideal outcome. This is really the biggest picture part. We are not going down into the nitty gritty yet. We are just figuring out who is your why, who is your ideal customer. And what this helps us do with a marketing and growth plan is that by the time we're done, basically we're going to have the treasure map to the growth, right? We're going to have this plan of attack to growth. And there are going to be things during the next year that come into your viewpoint that you're going to have to say no to. It's really hard to say no to an opportunity that sounds really good, but if it's not serving your mission, who your ideal customer is, or what your ideal outcome is, then it might be time to say no to something. So let's start. This is first piece. And one thing I will let you guys know is that we'll be sending out an email later today that will have links to a document that will have a lot of these pieces. It's not our full workbook that we have that walks you through these steps, but it'll have a lot of these pieces in there so that next week you guys can come with this stuff figured out and work through building the plan with me. The next step here is going to be evaluating where you're at. So this is not where you want to be. This is not where you came from. It is where you are at right now. Because a lot of times we don't take a step back and pull ourselves out of the weeds to see where we're at. This is going to be evaluating things like what worked and didn't work over the last year, 3 years, 5 years, or however long you've been in business. It's going to be evaluating your tech right now, right? Is there pieces of software that are not working the way you want them to work? Is there data that you're not collecting or that you're not utilizing? Is there marketing where you feel like you're doing a lot of work, but it's not really hitting the right spot, right? So what does this look like? This looks like audits of all your major business platforms. That's tech, web, social, marketing, customers, anything that's going to be a part of your business right now, taking an audit. Now, I don't want you to take 1 week on each of these audits. What I want you to do is sit down with whoever's in charge of these pieces of your business, really ask some simple questions like, what keeps you up at night? What is one thing that you need to make more streamlined? What does success look like on a day-to-day, day-to-day point, right? What parts of our day can we make more efficient? And we're really looking at, if we don't have the data, why don't we have the data? What can we do to set ourselves up to collect that data? Sometimes it's as simple as installing Google Analytics on your website, right? That sounds crazy. A lot of these things sound really, easy. And yet when we're in the day-to-day, they're not. And that's why we need to step back and do these questions. If you're a solopreneur and you don't have someone who's handling it in your business, ask yourself the same questions. Step into that role, have a conversation with yourself about these pieces. And one thing that I like to do is throughout the year, we use a project management software that allows us to track our time. And even though our employees do not get paid based on hours, we actually track every minute we do, mainly so we can go back during these times and say, okay, this part is taking way longer. Either we have to charge more for it, or we have to make it more efficient. Hey, Jessie, one of our girls, Jessie, hey, you're spending a lot of time every week on this, this, and this. How can we either make it more efficient, streamline it, automate it, or does it have to be the amount of time you're spending on it, right? This also allows us to ask questions around do we need more resources? Where do we need a resource? Where do we need to put more money towards? Things like that. The more data you have as a small business, the easier these questions every year become to answer, right? And the one thing I see that small businesses tend to do is, once again, we jumped in, we have our 2x4 and our hammer, and we just started building and selling. But we didn't set up the processes to collect that data, whether it's from our buyers, from our marketing campaigns, from our POS systems, right? These are the things that we need to look at. And remember, at this phase, we're not really having an answer to how we're going to fix any of these. We're just pulling all of this information into a document, into our brains, into the forefront of our business, so that we can then take that and analyze it and figure out how to solve for the next pieces. So don't get overwhelmed. I know it's a lot. Next, we're going to review our buyers, our competition, and our market, right? So one of the things that we need to look at is when you started your business, the world was probably in a different place. People were in a different place. Your ideal buyer may stay the same, but they may have different worries. One of the biggest examples of this is if your buyer was in their like 20s when you started and now they're in their 30s, right? They may not be thinking about the same things. They may not have the same worries. They may be looking at the security of their family versus just being a single person, right? There's lots of things that we need to look at. So this, many of you probably have seen something like this before. This is a buyer persona, what we call buyer personas. You may have heard them as avatars. They're your ideal customer. And this is how marketers like to lay it out. We like to put a face to it and a picture. We like to give them a name, an age range, and start really thinking about them as a real person. The reason this is so important is because as you start building like marketing information or messaging or even sales emails, you're going to want to think about this person as a person and really tell the story to them. So when I built this presentation, I thought of each of you as an actual person, right? I thought of someone in my life who is running a small business. What would be valuable to them? How can I tell them this story in a way that makes sense to them? And that's where these buyer personas really come in. It's a lot of work, it's a little bit of time, but at the end of the day, when you make decisions about your product, you're really thinking of a person, right? So what are their pain points? Where do they consume media? This is something that you may or may not have already. One thing that happens a lot is that we put these together, they get put in a Google Drive, and nobody ever kind of looks at them again or updates them again. So let's say you want to understand your customers and you don't already have buyer personas put together. My number one question I get asked is, where do I find this information? So really the first step, let's say we have a brand new company or a company that's never had, doesn't have data or has never put buyer personas together. We basically kind of think through who our ideal customer is. And then for each ideal customer, we pull information. So pulling that information is either talking through market research buyer persona. So like, how do you find, there's lots of data analysts and reports on industries, on people's buying habits, how long people stay on pages, things like that. There's lots of reports out there on the internet. So we start pulling all that information in. Then we say, who is this person, and maybe find my ideal customer on LinkedIn, right? Or maybe I know this ideal person because we built this company to solve a problem for our ideal person, right? Maybe we know them, maybe they're part of our family. We build that based on that. We maybe think through some other ways to pull, so educated guesses that should be validating our assumptions, right? So maybe building assumptions. The first round of buyer personas, I don't care what anyone tells you, the first round of buyer personas are educated assumptions. They're guesses based on data that we can find out there. So you don't need to find each and every piece. Someone said this is what it is. Like I said, find your ideal customer on LinkedIn, see where they find their information. Nowadays, it's so much easier to see like, okay, let me stalk their Instagram and their Facebook page. What are the stuff that they're talking about? Hey, oh, they're posting about podcasts, then they must get their information from podcasts, right? So starting to pull that information in. Your biggest mistake will be stopping here. Once you have that information, everything you do every year, the data you collect, the customers you talk to should be either validating or pivoting those assumptions. So let's say you already have buyer personas, or you already have this created, but now you've been in business 2, 3, 4 years. You want to update them. You should be updating this every year. And this is once again why we're pulling all this data together this week. Because next week, when we start building the plan, we want to have all this data in front of us pulled together so we can analyze it, right? So we want to update our buyer personas. Now we start looking at, we go from assumptions to actual data, right? We start looking at historical data from your CRM, your payment, your systems, your employees who deal with their customers, right? You look at your competitors. Do they have customer engagement on certain types of messaging, on certain types of campaigns? Did they put out a new product that did really well? Why? Ask yourself why on a lot of these pieces. And then also, let's ask, if you have customers, there are many ways to get this information from them. We can ask them through surveys, feedback loops, reviews. We can hold town halls. We can even put something out like a quiz that doesn't ask them to buy anything. People love to learn a little bit more about themselves. Marketers love quizzes because now they answer 10 or 12 questions that sounds to them like they're just having fun, but really we've worded the questions in ways that we're learning about our customers. Once you start putting those together, you'll see how the updated buyer personas will change with the political, social, and economic landscapes. And this will give you really a lot of confidence when you make decisions about your product, about your business, about your messaging. So I know I'm going fast because I'm a New Yorker and I talk really fast, but there's still so much more. Make sure if you have questions to put it in that Q&A so that we can answer them at the end for sure. Okay, the next piece you're going to inspect is your buying journey. This is a really important piece to kind of lay out. I love to lay it out like this in a very visual way, mainly because it just makes it easier for us in the next step to say, okay, this part is taking too long. This part needs to have some automation. This part needs to have emails written, right? It makes it really easy for us to look at it and really analyze it. When you're putting this together, you are putting together your buying journey the way it is right now, not the way it is ideally put together, right? How does your customer get to you? How do they get from the first interest all the way to buying your product? And then do we do anything in the buying journey to bring them back into our community, to resell them on a product or to upsell them? All of those pieces should be in here in a visual way so that at the end of the day, when we start analyzing all this information, we can really look at it and say, okay, we're missing a step here. This needs a little bit more efficiency. We need another, we need another employee to handle this piece, right? So really building out your entire buyer journey from the first touch point to the last touch point. And on this one, my favorite tool to actually use for this is called Lucidchart. I can send a link in that email later on if you guys want to try it. It's actually free/inexpensive. They make it very easy to build these flowcharts, and you'll see in future slides here how I use it in a different way as well. So just letting you know that's the tool that we use to build all of this stuff out. And I'm a very visual person. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts. Everything I do is very visual, even down to how we do our standard operating procedures. I have trouble sitting down and writing it out in a document. If I have an open blank document in front of me, my brain goes blank, right? So one of the things that I want to make sure you understand here is that if your brain does not work in this way, or your brain does not work by writing it out, or you have some way that makes this overwhelming or uncomfortable to do, find a way that makes it easier. So when we do standard operating procedures, I have trouble writing it into a doc. So I first flowchart it out. And then from there, I can take the flowchart and make it in and put it into words. Same thing with like writing blog posts or presentations. A lot of people, when they sit down at the computer to write this out, they get a little overwhelmed. They have trouble with this. And I've seen this a lot in small business founders because you started your business to do something that generally is not running a business or writing, right? And so people get overwhelmed by this. And so one tip I have is whenever I have to write a presentation and I'm stuck, what I'll do is I'll actually go out for a walk and I'll start going through the presentation in my head and start seeing myself giving that presentation. I've done it with this one. I did it with all the ones in the past. Start seeing myself giving that presentation. I start saying it out loud, right? Well, out loud in my head, as long as I'm not on the canal. If you see someone on the canal talking to themselves, you know that's probably me. But go for a walk. Let your body start to like relax a little bit. Let your mind start to relax into it. Give that presentation or build that flow chart or think through the messaging you want to talk to your customer about. It gives your brain the permission to make mistakes. When you have an open document, it does not give your brain the permission to make mistakes. You want it to be perfect, right? This gives your brain permission to make mistakes. And then once you have something that's really good, open your phone, talk it into a note. It's not going to be perfect, but when you get back to your computer, now copy those notes into your document and start to make changes. It works for me hands down every time. But the moral of the story is figure out which way you need to see it and then convert it to wherever you need to be, right? So for me, I like to see things visually. Lucid Chart is an amazing tool if you are like me. If it's the opposite way, you like to write and then move to visual, absolutely do that as well. So I went off on a little bit of a tangent, so we're going to kind of pull it back here. The next step is competitors. So taking a deep dive into your competitors' marketing plan allows you to see what's working for them and working not just for them, but in your key demographic. So find competitors who are much bigger than you. Find competitors who are the same size as you. If you find competitors who are bigger than you, you can take advantage of all the money and research they've done, right? Because they've probably done the same research as you. And so see what sales do really well. Did they run that sale again? Did they do that social media post again? If they start continuously doing social media posts that look very similar, it's because they're getting the reaction they want from your ideal customer. My favorite way to do this too is to look for someone who is in the same your ideal demographic. They don't have to be an actual competitor, but look at someone who's maybe talking to the same ideal demographic as you, maybe not selling the same product, but then see how they're messaging, what is working, what is not. And also, if you want to be like a speaker, for instance, I put that picture down there. Anytime I see, I follow some of these people who speak to my ideal demographic, and let's say I see them speaking at an event, I take a screenshot right away and I send it to my PR agent, or for you, now you know events to apply for or to advertise in, right? Maybe you don't want to be a speaker, maybe you don't want to be on stage, but if those events are dealing with your ideal demographic, maybe you want to advertise at them, or the next time they have an event, you want to set up a booth, right? So starting to look at competitors differently, not just the normal, hey, they're a competitor, what can I do that copies them or gets, kind of does what they're doing, but who's talking to my ideal demographic? And then how can I use what they're doing and say, okay, maybe I'll advertise at this event. Maybe I'll apply to speak at this event. They have already my key demographic. The other thing I want to give you guys a caveat on this is I have trouble a little bit with the competitor situation. And here's why. In the marketing world, just because a competitor did it doesn't mean it's going to work for you. So I say this, I'm going to say it again for the cheap seats, right? For the people who maybe weren't paying too much attention, now's the time to pay attention, right? So just because a competitor does it and it's successful does not mean it'll work for you. This is where I have a little bit of beef with all of those marketers out there selling you out of the box, hey, here are my 100 Canva templates for you to use as small businesses. So small businesses in the marketing world get the short end of the stick because they don't get the customized plans. And what happens is that we've seen this time and time again historically, where you can absolutely 100% take a competitor's plan who is successful and it not work. I can start a cola company tomorrow, take Coca-Cola's plan exactly, and it may not become Coca-Cola, right? It depends on where your buyers are at. It depends on your features. It depends on a lot of things. And so we have to continuously tweak So when you see a competitor doing something, it doesn't mean you should take it verbatim and copy and paste it. It means that you need to think about it as, ask the question, why? Why is it working for my competitor? What are they messaging? What key things are my demographic latching onto that make this work? And I know this sounds like a lot, but as you start doing it, if you start changing your mindset to ask the why question, this will seem a lot more intuitive as you do it. Okay, moving on from there, the next step. So we talked about what our mission or our why was. We talked about where we are currently, and now we're going to talk about where we want to be. Now, like I said, these things don't have to work in this order. Many founders I see and business owners I see, some of them have this part really figured out. They can see where they want to be. Some of them are so in the weeds of today that today and where they are now is really easy for them to look through. And some of them are driven by their why. So the why is really easy. So whichever part you are, start there and work backwards to the other parts. Because once again, there's a lot of information and I don't want it to become overwhelming to you. So whichever part makes sense to you, start there. So where we want to be. This is a part that you don't see often in building marketing plans and growth plans in the way that we do it, because it makes you have to think about what your business will look like in 5, 10, or 15 years, right? It's a lot of work that seems like a lot of work, but what it'll allow us to do is say, okay, here's our why. Here's where we are now. Here's where we want to be. Now we build the plan on how do we get there. And once again, like I talked about earlier, this allows us to say no to the opportunities and things that look really sparkly, that the feature set that we are like, oh my gosh, we need to add this to our product, but it doesn't bring us any closer to where we need to be. It allows us to say, this does not fit into our plan this year. Maybe we put it in a backlog, maybe we think about it next year, but it does not fit into our plan this year. This one is the one that can look like a lot of things. So it can look like this. This is Lucid Chart again, right? This is us building out, some things in our business, right? This is old. I've changed it to 2024, but these are old plans where we're really looking through matrix of what are our products, who are our buyers, do we have products that are, or I'm sorry, what are our pillars? So on this, you'll see what are the buyer personas on top, what are the buyer personas having issues with on the side, that's what we call our pillars, and then do we have a product that fixes that issue for each of our buyers, right? So we're really thinking through our product timeline. The other one is how does our ideal business run? Even though this is not what our business is set up with yet, how do we in 5 years want the business to run? Do we have departments? Do we have directors or project managers? How much money are each of the departments making us, right? What does that structure kind of look like? And this could look like a visual structure like this. This could look like a flow chart structure like this. This could even look like a spreadsheet structure like this, right? You can see very similar setups here where you have your buyer across the top, your products across the side, which products deal with which buyer, or it could be monthly numbers. Every business owner is different and going to want to see this in different ways. This is why we do those personality tests, right? That tell us how we want to see things. It could even look like this. And this is my favorite way of doing it, is turning off your computer or maybe having your computer there for backup, but really talking through each of these pieces. How does it look in the future? How does the structure and your customer flow look 5 years down the line? And you may not have all the answers, and you're not going to have all the answers, but if we have a basic structure of who you're helping in 5 years, What does your customer flow or product flow look like in 5 years? What are the products that you need to get to? Our next step when we come to phase 2 of building our plan, we can say, okay, we want to be here in 5 years. We are here. How do we build the pieces that get us from point A to point B? And now we can start saying, okay, instead of doing 10 million marketing campaigns a year that is spreading us way too thin, that's costing us way too much money, and that we don't have resources for, how can we plan on 5 or these specific campaigns that we know with confidence are going to get us to our end point, or at least closer, and get us to our end goal, right? So these are my favorite ways of doing this, and we do this with our customers all the time. As full day, this one in the middle, we actually stayed overnight in Flagstaff. It allows us to get out of our day-to-day offices. It allows us to really think through the big picture and turn our brains off. Whatever way felt comfortable to you to do, that's the way you're going to do this. And I'm actually going to skip ahead to one more step here. My absolute favorite way to do this, and my number one question I always ask, is if there is a company out there that if you had in 5 years that's running, it doesn't have to be a competitor. In fact, I would rather it not be a competitor. But if there was a company out there that is running the way and talking to people and doing the types of products you want to do out there, who are they? How are they structured? What are the messaging they're doing? Are they doing 1 launch a year? Are they doing 5 launches a year? Are they doing town halls? What are they doing? Maybe it's because do they have 5 employees? Do they have 10 employees? Right? Are they running ads? Right? This is things that we can start looking at from a brand standpoint. How do they talk to their customers? What does their brand look and feel like, right? These are things, if you could have that, what would it be? And it's this coming back to that question of what is success for you? One thing I want everyone here to remember is that success is different for everyone. It does not have to be a $1 billion unicorn company. It does not have to be, I want to speak on stages. And it certainly does not have to be, I want to be written up in Forbes, right? Like that is, success could be, my dad at the very beginning that I showed you has felt very successful his whole life. Yes, he had $1 million company, but he also didn't have a big, office building in New York City, right? Like that, he had clients and friends who did and felt like that was success. It's going to be building your company around the life you want that makes you successful. So if that is finding someone that you say, I want to be this person in 5 years, or I want my company to run like this company, that may help you think through what the structure of your company needs to be. Okay, so whatever you do, whether it's visual, it's sticky notes, it is a spreadsheet, what it needs to have is an org chart for 5 years down the line. You may not know everything, but at least a good idea of we need 5 engineers in order to grow this much, or we need someone who is, maybe it's, and this is not me personally, but maybe you're saying, I hate doing all of the business day-to-day admin work and I just want to work on the creative design work. Maybe you need to pull in a general manager who's going to deal with the day-to-day. Maybe you need a project manager. What does that org chart look like? You may not be getting to that in 2024, but knowing that you need to get there in 2025 or 2026 will help you figure out what you need to do in 2024 to get there. What are your ideal processes and customer flow, right? Once again, now at the end of this exercise, we have our customer flow where we are now, we have our customer flow where we need to be, and now we can start seeing where the gaps are. Where do we have to work in 2024? Ideal product features. This one's huge. This one is so big. Now, this is going to change, but so often what I've fallen into this trap, and I see this in small businesses, that we get really hooked on one thing in our mind, like this product feature is going to sell the product. We work a lot, we put a lot of money and time and effort into it, and then realize it does not really align, or our buyers don't really care about that feature. or it doesn't fit into where the world is socially or economically or politically, right? And so we want to make sure that the product features are getting us closer to our why, closer to our ideal buyer, all of those pieces. All right, I'm going to go over this one more time. Feeling overwhelmed. The order of these steps is not important. Just start. Start with one. Remember, this part of the building of a plan does not have to be perfect. There's nothing about this that is perfect. There's no right or wrong answers. Everything is about getting it out of your head and onto paper. Small business owners are historically known for keeping everything in their head, being the bottlenecks in their company, and that's what's going to stop your growth. We need to get it out of your head onto some paper so now we can build our plan, build our growth goals, and that is living somewhere for other people to kind of hold us accountable, but also for our team to go in that direction as well. So what's your homework? Answering the questions in this presentation is your homework, and I don't want you to be nervous about the fact that you may not have taken notes. Keep an eye out for a follow-up email. I will have a document in there. It won't be our full workbook, but it will be some of the questions that are in here so that you can start filling them out and come next time with all of the foundational information you need to be as effective in building your plan next time. And so that kind of goes into what we're doing next time, which is how to build a growth plan that meets your goals. We're going to take all this information that seems very fluffy right now, and we're going to put it down into set in stone goals that will take you from point A to your success in 2024. So last few slides, I know we're at time here. Let me ask you a question. Are you ready to see success in your business and stop stressing about growth? Because that's what I want for you. I want my mission in life is to make sure that small businesses are in proactive, not reactive stages. Because if that hit a nerve with you in the beginning, then that is why we are here today. And that is what my mission. We at Clever Cow have put out a few products, both free and paid, that will help you with that mission. One of those is we just launched a YouTube series called What the Frack, where we break down both marketing trends and how you can troubleshoot them in your business. So please check us out there. And also for all ACA members, for the next 24 hours, we're giving you guys 25% off all of our top 5 strategy products. I will send out the link in the chat as well as the follow-up email as well. So I think we are at time for questions, right, Robert?
Yeah, we are at time, and got a question from Victor. It says, in your opinion, what will be the #1 marketing tool or strategy in 5 years? I don't know if 5 years is too far off. We need to look at what that will be in like 2 years.
Yeah. No, so the #1 marketing strategy or tool. So I'm going to go with strategy because the tools may change, but the marketing strategy is what's going to stay. And for me, although I understand where AI fits into making people more efficient, helping them get tasks done, being better at research and things like that, I think that the marketing world has pushed towards AI really heavily. And I think that in 3 years, we're going to see people saying, oh, how did they accomplish that? Oh, they knew their buyers really well and they wrote their own thought leadership or their own messaging, right? Knowing your buyer is going to push you through any tool that comes in and out of marketing. So really having a true understanding, whether that is being a founder who's out there talking to their customers, having the data to think through it, and then how do you message to that customer? Having an understanding of that is going to be your #1 marketing strategy or tool moving forward. With that being said, I think that building a community, it has been proven and seen that in the next 5 years, having a community is going to be the #1 revenue driver for all businesses. So building a community that's not just about and I don't mean just social media, but building a community that's not just about sales, but has some other value to it will help you drive sales in the future.
Excellent, thank you. We have one more in the Q&A, and it says, what project management tool are you using to track your time?
Ooh, good one. I love ClickUp. Okay, I've used every project management tool out there. They have their pros and cons. I'm not going to say bad things about any of them. And it depends on what you like to see, but I am addicted to ClickUp. My entire business runs off it. I can also send you guys a link to this to ClickUp and you get a discount. But the reason we use ClickUp is because you can see once you have all the data in there and it's customizable to the data you want. So we work on projects, everything from web all the way to like strategy and consulting. And there wasn't one project management system that can flex to the different types of projects. This one can. And once you set up the customability in it, then you can see the data in different ways. So I like to see everything visually. My billing manager wants to see it in a table view. We can both see it in both of those different ways. It tracks time and it has automation. So ClickUp is going to be the one that I recommend, and I can grab you guys affiliate code that will give you a percentage off if you want to try it.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicole. That looks like all the questions we have, and we are just a hair past time, but that's all right. We want to thank you, Nicole, for being with us today. We want to thank all of our attendees for being here. Please share this webinar series with your friends and business acquaintances and get them to join us next week, and they can watch today's video. It'll be on the content library, and it'll be shared in the weekly email that we send out as well, the link to it. But we hope you enjoyed it, and we hope you're with us next week for the next session to hear more from Nicole on how to implement your growth plan or create it. And so we're excited about these next few weeks of webinars, so please join us for them. But for today, we're going to wrap up and wish everybody a great rest of your week, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye, guys.